Aloha, everyone, and welcome to Our Undoing Radio Season 11. This is an entire season with Tom Cheetham. So if you missed last week's episode, that's a pretty good introduction to Tom, and we're picking it up right where we left off. So you may want to listen to that first. We're telling a story here, folks. We're telling a story. So we're going to continue on with that story right now. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Gather around the fire, kids. So, how many books have you written about Henry Corbin?
Henry Corbin. Five, I think. So yeah. So, but they're short books. They're not big books.
Well,
When
and
Jeff writes a book, it's 700 pages long. When I write a book, it's like 160.
well,
Um,
but your books are hugely acclaimed, and from what I have read about you, it seems as though like the one refrain I see over and over is how you seem to be have inhabited Corbin in some way. It's almost as though people think you're channeling Corbin more than writing about him. And I wonder, is that hyperbole, or did you feel something of that as you were writing him and thinking in his terms?
and this
Like,
is
is that
one.
its own paranormal event
Yeah,
in a way?
yeah, yeah, that's a question which I am now able to ask myself. And the other thing to emphasize is, again, I'm not an experiencer. That is to say, there's still a significant chunk of my personality which is still somewhat resistant and in a good way skeptical. But in a good way
Well,
skeptical
let me just put
about the
this out there.
nature of my own experience.
Before you get going on this, let me just throw out there that it doesn't even, it would still be amazing. Like, I'm not asking you, and maybe you believe this, I don't know, are you literally channeling like the spirit of
Yeah,
Henry Corbin? I'm thinking more in the line of there is something about when a writer, especially, or any artist, I'm sure, they start to inhabit the thing that is preoccupying them. And that has its own, the fact that your own sense of self is so malleable is almost a paranormal thing to the extent where people can read your work and go, wow, this isn't you, this is them, this is weird. How are other scholars who must also experience the same thing in their writing ignoring that or dealing with that? How did you deal with that before you let the floodgates open?
yeah. No, yeah. That is the question. Um, and I can't re-inhabit my former self, really, you know. But here's how I think about that. Um, Here's part of how I think about that. Each of the books was written out of a slightly different kind of experience. And to be as generalized as possible, it began very obsessively. I didn't really have a choice about this. I mean, I just started writing this stuff, and I was writing it for myself because these were questions that I had that I needed to pursue, and I was pursuing them using the tools that Hillman and Corbin and a handful of others that I read gave me, and it was it and it was I come to see now the whole process was kind of aspirational. When I first read Corbin, I literally thought to myself, and this I do remember, where is he standing that he can write about Heidegger and Islamic angels in the same paragraph? What kind of experience of the world is this guy manifesting? And what would it be like to go there? And so for 30 years, I was kind of moving towards, I think. Whether I was always aware of it, I kind of don't think so, but I was kind of saying, wow, look at this. And then recently, within the last maybe 10 years, I realized, oh, I'm in it. which had the following feeling. Which I think is true, at least my little trail through this kind of uh, experiential hermeneutic, which is one of Jeffrey's keywords because it's important, which means interpretation. So I think what I was doing was interpreting Corbin's work to myself from the outside as I slowly was beginning to inhabit that world. And then one day, not all that long ago, or it wasn't one day, but I slowly began to realize as I was explaining it to students, oh, I see what happens. You can't really understand this until you're in it. And now I'm in it, and I begin to see these relationships. And all of this sounds highly academic, and I suppose it is. It's also somatic for me. It begins to change your experience of the world, not not like a drug, but very slowly over time. And I think the analogy for me is like studying the natural sciences does. If you fall in love with insects, which I did, suddenly your world is, I mean, you're still with people, you're still eating ham sandwiches, but oh my God, you're just noticing things. And the same with geology and botany and astronomy, whatever, whatever it is about the natural world that most attracts you changes your experience. And that is we call it intellectual, but this is one of the points that Hillman made that just flabbergasted me. Ideas are presences. They're not abstract. You live in terms of ideas, and they influence your experience of the world. And so it was that kind of inhabiting of Corbin's work that I did over all those years, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but of course, me being me, I have to ask the paranormal questions too, which is like as you're getting into him, do you start having synchronicities or deja vu or things that seem like either an invisible hand, is guiding you or is telling you you're on the right path?
In retrospect, I have to wonder, and no, it's stronger than that. I do not now, nor have I ever had a sense that I was being dictated to, though there are plenty of poets and literary people who say, oh no, my including Rilke and Jack Spicer and all sorts of people who do say, oh yes, I was writing down. I've never things that I was being dictated to, either quite literally or at least they were not coming from me. And there's a sense in which, in retrospect, it does feel like that. It was like, I don't know. I mean, I certainly can say this. I didn't choose Henri Corbin. If someone had told me I'd still be thinking about his stuff 30 years later, I mean, I would never have chosen to do that. And yet, God damn, here I am. And I still now that the final blinkers fell off, thanks to you and whoever else, maybe Boga, I can seriously consider that I've not been responsible for this life, and I don't know how to think about it. It's just that it does seem to hang together in a funny way. And when, I'm hopefully going to live some more years, and when I start to think about what I might do next, I realize that all along I've been driven by what I guess people call intuition. And that's the most I can say about it, but I trust it now.
Does that go for your work with insects as well? Like, looking back on that, can you say, like, I've had these synchronicities that led me to these discoveries or to tell me that I'm on the right path? I mean,
You,
sort of the
you
same
know,
question.
yeah, it is the same question. Um, yeah, I think so. As far out of bounds, it it's like this just occurs to me. I'm a little uncontrolled and uncontrollable. And it's almost as if um, I bang over here and I bang over. It's sort of like a bug in a cage. You bang, 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 and somebody keeps giving me the walls. No, 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 stay in here, stay in here. And the insects. I mean, that came to me as just fascination. It was like, oh my God. And it was like, oh, I have to consider this as a possibility. I mean, it always, gets chewed up by reality, but and oh, here's the thing for the listeners that don't know. So I wrote my dissertation. I don't have a copy right here, it's in the hall, on the penis of fleas. This is a true story. Um, there's I have known for a very long time, and it's up on my wall right now because I just ordered it. There's a William Blake drawing painting. It's I forget in what media, gesso or something, called The Ghost of a Flea. And I've been drawn to William Blake for a long time because he's a crazy imaginer. And I finally thought, I should probably take that more seriously than I ever have, because the fleas were really important in my life, not because they were fleas, but because of what they allowed me to see about the detailed structures of the natural world. And trust me, if you're not at all familiar with microscopes and that kind of biology, you have no idea how
It's its own
wonderful.
psychedelic trip, really.
It is its own psychedelic trip. And Blake, it's a universe in a grain of sand, an eternity in an hour. And that is really true for me. I spent 30 years professionally staring through microscopes. And you have to have a certain kind of relationship to reality for that to be fun, which it was, you know. And so from the outside, it looks really weird and always did to me too. But now it seems like, oh, this sort of hangs together. Blake's got his ghost of a flea and his visions of whatnot, and and I'm not able to let go of the knowledge, the familiarity, let's not call it knowledge, the the familiarity that I have with certain aspects of the natural world in favor of something mystical and transcendent. You got to have it all. At least I do, because one doesn't deny the other, it just confirms it.
So I have on a whole other tangent or something question about when you're looking at fleas.
Yeah.
Um, obviously you're looking at their reproductive habits, and so you can sort of see the relationality. We can sort of relate to that on a very base level. Do you ever see any behavioral traits in them where you're like, oh, that seems human?
Oh gosh, well, that raises a whole bunch of, yeah. The fleas are difficult to study and their reproductive habits, as you might imagine, because they're very small, and they don't usually like to copulate in petri dishes, so it's a little hard to catch them in flagrante delicto. But we do, so it's slightly hard to say something explicit about fleas, but here's well, let's use this as a window into some of the some of the issues that arise when you try to bring together um, poetry and the natural world. So I, I'll just give you a little story, but it has huge ramifications if I were able to articulate them. So we are told not to anthropomorphize in biology. Don't think of your animals as if they were human. That's a mistake. That would be, what do you call it? It's one of those fallacies uh, in literature. It's the oh gosh, what's I can't remember it. Your listeners will know, but we don't do things like that. We draw, in order to be objective students of nature, we make a wall between our own feelings and the natural world. It's, maybe it's easy in fleas, because they don't have much in the way of emotional lives, I think. They just do what they do in order to lay eggs and have babies and get their genes into the next generation. But then, at a certain point in the hierarchy of things, so when you're talking about flea reproduction, it's just verboten to talk about anything that that smells like human emotion, or there was a guy. Oh man, there was a guy who was talking about something and he talked about male flies raping females. Well, that just made everybody furious on a million different levels, the gender level, the whole thing. But also because no, they can't do things like that. They just have reproductive behaviors. Boom. On the other hand, what about like monkeys? Insects, not so bad. Protozoans, we don't worry about them having emotions. But as you get up the so-called chain of being, what we used to say with Descartes, that humans were the only beings with souls. And, if you want to do vivisection on a dog or a chimpanzee or an elephant or a dolphin, it's fine because they don't have emotions, they don't have brains. And we don't do that anymore, most of us. We now know that we love our dog because our dog loves us. And most people who have pets, oh man, of course they have emotions, even if the scientists tell you they don't. And the scientists, I got to say, are starting to come around and say, well, maybe we've been wrong about that. I don't know about souls, but shit, maybe they do have emotions. Maybe maybe they even are self-conscious. Oh, and see, that was the deal for hundreds of years after the Enlightenment, that we are self-conscious, we have souls, we have consciousness, and nothing else does.
Well, so this gets to something that I talk about quite a bit that I don't see anyone else ever talking about, really. So that is either patting myself on the back or I'm just out on a limb and wrong. But it seems to me that, science, as you've been talking about it, we can agree sort of that science in quotes, does away with superstition, purely logical, objective, has all of those sorts of aims. And yet, what I see and say is that it is also the unconscious motivator of science is, in fact, Christianity, at least in the West. And so there are these things like, we everything is here for us to do what we want with. That's why animals don't have souls. That's why humans are special. That's why they can get away with doing that sort of work. What do you say about that? Do you think that that is true?
Yeah, it is true. I mean, I mean, sure. There's That's a good thumbnail sketch of the history of Western Europe. And you're not alone, trust me.
Because often, let me just interrupt. So, I'll say things like this, and then I will get pushback, or I will say, science is the new religion, which isn't to say that science is as bad or any of that, but I get this pushback on, no, science has nothing. It's no, these are the new priests who dictate to you how reality is supposed to be, and with new information there is the amnesia that they didn't know a minute ago, and then and it seems to me that we're constantly, everything gets updated. So it's like, oh, scientists just made a new discovery that upends everything we know about blank. And then we're supposed to praise that as like, wow, isn't it amazing that we keep learning? But that just also means, I mean, the shadow side of that is that everything you thought you knew wasn't learned, was in fact false, and that there just seems to be this like flux of learning that happens to be the truth. I don't know. Somewhere in there, I seem to get crap for, but it seems to also be true.
Well, there's a lot in that. So and I think I only cognized a couple parts of it because so the first thing is about the Christianity part, and of course it's bigger than Christianity,
It's
but
really Old Testament.
yeah, there's a lot in those traditions which got continued in the cultures of the West, even after the religions became less important. I mean, it kind of makes sense if you think of culture or history of Western Europe in particular is what we're talking about, as having a certain kind of momentum, certain kinds of imperial, colonial, patriarchal, there's lots of ways of thinking about it, dominant, Christian, there's a lot of tendencies that come along with that kind of large scale culture, which continue once people say, well, maybe we can just give up the whole God thing. It doesn't mean you change, become less colonialist, less patriarchal, less whatever. So a lot of that still is look, I don't read this stuff much anymore, but one of the books that years ago put it pretty starkly for me was Carolyn Merchant's book, probably from the 1970s, called The Death of Nature. When she's, as I recall, and this is a long time ago, she ties Francis Bacon and the self-conscious origin of scientific procedures. She ties that in with the whole Christian Western dominion over the earth, and all that. So that's totally true. That there's a through line in the kind of cultures that developed their powers in the West. And keep in mind, take this all with a little bit of grain of salt because life is and history is super complicated. But if you think you've been given dominion by God and you take that part of the Bible more seriously than the parts that say you should love everybody, you pick the parts that fit your agenda. And then you find out that, oh shit, physics works and I can build better guns and better bombs, then you're primed. You're all set because you got dominion and now you got guns. So you can just, okay, then you can really forget the love thy neighbor and, thou shalt not kill part. You forget that part. So clearly there's a lot of that. Now, second part, what I heard, and this is what I heard with the defensive scientific thing. Here's oh no, you're wrong about science. One of the things that is this is what I heard. This may be not what you were saying. Is that science is a process of, at its best, the ideal of scientific activity is you go with the most interesting hypothesis you have about whatever it is you're thinking about, astronomy, biology, cancer research, psychology, whatever you want to think about, human emotions. You're trying to explain something or you're trying to do something, and you try to come up with a way to explain it or do it, and then you test it and you see if it works. And if it doesn't work, you say, well, that can't be right. And you keep doing that until you get something that does explain things or does do something. And at that point, you say, aha, now I've got it. And then you tell everybody. And then, like 50 years later, somebody finds out, well, it wasn't like the classic example is Newton and Einstein. I mean, the great story, and I should look this up because you can actually find references to it. But at the end of the 1800s, in real universities in Europe, physics professors were telling their students, you should find something else to do because we pretty much know everything. We got it covered. And there's going to be no more research in physics. And you should go into business instead. And then, Einstein, and then quantum mechanics. And the big shifts in the sciences happen infrequently, but when they do happen, people say, "Oh my God, we were wrong." And that happens. It's supposed to happen. It's the smaller things that mostly get the press, that, oh, we were wrong about fats, or we were wrong about broccoli, or and that can look utterly chaotic from the outside.
Yes. I don't know about broccoli. That's all I got. Good night, everybody.
But so I can do this kind of thing forever. I totally overmatched you and didn't give you any
No,
chance to
I
talk.
wanted to get into, because I'm sure my crowd, a lot of them aren't familiar with you, so it would be great for them to get
Okay.
a
And
hold of that.
I don't care because I trust you. I don't care what you do with the cutting and editing, as long as
All
maybe
I'm
say
editing
something.
for is,
Yeah.
if there are really long pauses,
Yeah.
I'll just edit those down. But content
So
wise, no,
so
everything
so
stays.
give this some thought, and if you want to keep doing it, I'm
No, we
game.
have to keep doing it.
Then
I
I'm
have you on
in.
for an entire season. We have to do
I, I
at
am
least
I
one
am
more.
totally in, and my only caveat is that at a certain point relatively soon we need to do more back and forth.
Well, we can do that next time if you want. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot in there that you got to that sounded like you wanted to talk about, at least in terms of like rationality.
Well, I mean, one of the things, and let's not do this without paying attention to doing it for an audience, but I'm super interested in talking to you, and maybe you can put this up if you want. Why am I super interested? Let me do that for 5 minutes. Let me see if I can
Okay.
articulate why do I want to do this with you. I mean, I will say I took Jeff totally seriously. Jeremy is my teacher. You're not his only teacher, um, you know,
Damn it.
uh, but but I took him seriously when he said that, and that's why I got in touch in the first place. Here's I guess what it comes down to. I'm not looking for truth from you, though I know you'd be happy to give it to me, or at least I have that sense. Um, but I'm I'm getting on in age, and I'm not, I want to, yeah, I guess I want to make as much progress towards, no, it's not so much enlightenment. I mean, I don't care. And it's not God's self-consciousness. I take it. I probably wouldn't take it if it were handed to me. Doesn't sound like it's all that much fun, but if it happened, I would do it. But what I would like to continue doing is I'd like to hope that I can accelerate this process of knocking down walls. I have the dis here's what I think as a hypothesis, that I was a fucking really weird little kid, and largely the weirdness was terrifying. deliria, and just bad shit. I had a lot of that every time I got sick, and and nightmares, and all kids have that. And that's part of my question. All kids have that shit. And what happened to me, I had a mother who and this is the source of my real revulsion at snide condescension. She was snidely yeah, 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 she was that about anyone who dared believe in religion. That was just wishful thinking. It was just weak people who believed in anything but death. you know, I mean, really, she was pretty bad. And I soaked that stuff up. And at a very early age, I soaked up the lesson that stuff that comes of that other people don't see, that comes at you, that's all unreal. It's all just unreal. It's imagination. It's in your head. Just forget it. We'll dunk you in a cold bath and you'll be okay. Just forget it. It's not real. And my hypothesis is that when you do that to a kid, you lose everything. I mean, I certainly understand it when you tell the kids that the demons are just in their heads. You lose access to your angels too, because then anything that's not part of the consensus middle American reality just is not real. And so in my 70s, I'm trying to maybe get some of that shit back. And
Careful with the demons.
yeah, 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 I'd like to be, but I mean, one of the things we could talk about this or not is, well, we probably should, but my iboga experiences are super interesting, and I have not yet been terrified. I've
Hmm.
been in misery for 36 hours, but I haven't yet been terrified. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's got to be coming.
I don't
You
know.
know?
So I've been watching videos on the YouTubes about iboga,
Mm,
and it seems that the consensus is, including a clinic in Mexico that I guess uses it
yeah,
clinically in some way,
yeah,
that, and you tell me if this jives with what you experienced, that it's usually what, like between a 6 and 12 or 9 something hour journey.
yeah,
And the
yeah.
first half of it is sort of you're having the visionary experiences and all that, but they all have to do with your personal issues. And then in the second half of the journey, you're sort of parsing together, why am I seeing this? You're sort of working out therapeutically what that stuff means. Is that what you experienced?
No, I mean, I could, no. Um,
So I just want to give this as an example because this one guy, the guy actually, I think one of the people who runs the clinic said that he sort of had the experience of being on, for all intents and purposes, a UFO and blasting off into space, and all these stars, and any star he saw he could go to. But when he got to them, what he realized that those stars aren't actually stars, they're either memories of his
ooh, ooh,
or they're thoughts that he's had about memories.
ooh,
And so
ooh.
he would watch them play out. And this is something that I heard in testimonial after testimonial of people that sounds like a life review sort
Yeah.
of situation, like a near death experience. Like they see these memories of themselves in the third person, they watch them play out. Is that not what you've
Yeah,
experienced?
no, no, no.
Huh.
And actually, I don't want to talk about other people's experience because I'm perfectly happy to talk about my own, but I don't want to, I literally do not want to hear about other people's experiences, which I have done because I talk to people
Yeah,
who
no, I get that.
down
Yeah.
there, um, because I don't want any expectations.
Right.
I've had I've been down there twice now, and both times were awful. And as soon they were terrible, and immediately after the second really awful experience, I knew immediately I'm coming back because wow, I got to know what happens next, and so the short version is the first time I went down, I honestly I just read Kripal's stuff, you know. I read Eric Davis's High Weirdness as an intro, and then I read literally 5 or 6 of Jeff's books, and they had me kind of spinning my head. Hadn't yet read you, but then I went down and had my iboga experience, and I was so resistant at every level. I mean, I've never done anything like that. I took some psilocybin mushrooms that I grew my own, a year before. Nothing. But I mean, it's a real religious tradition from Gabon in West Africa. So there's all this ceremonial stuff, and there's the ceremonial dress, and it's like, oh my God, it's a bunch of weirdos from California in the 60s. This is just the sort of shit I can't stand. I was so full of my, resistances. Oh my God, I can't believe I got into this. Can we please just do the fucking drug? I was a real asshole. And then when I did the drug, it didn't last very long. I was unconscious and gone pretty quickly. But what I did see was just dark, black, awful stuff and blockages in the tunnel. And then I refused to do the second night and all sorts of. And then in the ceremony, the closing ceremony, they told me, you don't have to do a second night. It's fine. We're not going to force you to do anything, but you have to come to the closing ceremony because you're part of the group. There's all these beautiful young women, it's like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going for the closing ceremony. And I had a real profound experience, not a blast, just a still small voice, and it was like, oh my God, I think I was just touched by the positive feminine. It's the only words I could use. Oh my God, made me weep a little bit. Nothing, no bells and whistles, just, I don't think I've ever felt that before. I don't, yeah, I mean, I suppose there's all sorts of ways of talking about it, but I thought, yeah, that's probably the positive feminine
What did
energy
it
of
feel like that made you think that?
made me relax. It was like, oh, it was like, I don't know, it was kind of
So, do you think that you're a high energy person because your mom was a negative feminine?
yeah,
Huh.
yeah. I think my sister and I have both been running like the Red Queen just to stay in one place all our lives. Yeah, yeah, for
Hmm.
sure. And so this, I definitely think that. So that's very reductive and Freudian, and I think it's true, or at least it's true enough to be true enough to be true. No, not true, but I think that's a useful framing to help me understand the various parts of myself. Second time I go down, because after the first time I thought, okay, I was an asshole. I got something really cool out of this. And I now know that I'm full of resistances. And I think I broke some of them down. So go down the second time, short version of long story. It was a 4-day ceremony. Um, the short version is take the stuff. It hits you like a ton of bricks about half an hour, 40 minutes after you take it. I had 4 times the dose this time, second time. And it was bad. It was vomiting black bile and black bile and being in black sticky tar and misery and flames and horrible shit. And I remember looking up at our priest, our Nima, and I said, "Oh my God, it is so awful." And he's smiling down at me and saying, "Oh no, congratulations. This is so wonderful." And that kind of got through me, even in my state. I thought, oh, okay, this is like, yeah, yeah, okay, right. I'm going through all this. I'm getting rid of shit, which is true. And so for 36 hours, oh, I'll never come back. This is horrible. This is the worst thing I ever had. And as soon as it was over, I'm coming back as soon as I can possibly get back, you know, because I got it. Because, okay, now she's had her way with me. I have been, and what was, I think, a real take home was this was not a thought experiment. This was not intellectual work, which I'm pretty good at. This was not ideation. this wasn't really even emotion. It was somatic. It was being dragged through black tar. You know, it was work on a level that I don't know how you do that in other circumstances, but I was clearly being worked over in
How did you come
ways.
out of that?
Fine, because
No, I
yeah,
mean how like as you're being dragged through black tar and all, how does that resolve itself in the experience?
I don't. It's funny, but I kind of don't remember. I guess what probably happens is you just fall asleep and you dream. And I have a couple of dreams. Oh, I had a dream. Whether it's a dream or vision, whether I was conscious or unconscious, there's two scientists who are so far out into interstellar space, just infinitely far out. And one of them, they're doing experiments. Um, and they've done two experiments, and they're both me somehow, so I'm right there. And one says, "Oh, well, that experiment totally didn't work," and the other one says, "Well, at least we know that black holes exist." and, and that makes perfect sense to me. I definitely proved that black holes exist, and I spent 36 hours in one working my way through it. And then I woke up and was like, oh, okay, now we'll have our closing ceremony with the flowers and the beautiful women, and this will all be great. And I'm definitely coming back. Got to see what happens next, man.
Are the women part of the
Yeah,
ceremony, or are they
yeah,
participants like you?
a little bit both.
Okay.
It's usually a small group the way we do it. 12, 15 people, something like that. Yeah.
And do you think that they are, are they are hires, right? They work there.
Oh no, no, there's no, these are people who are initiates. Then there are
Okay.
five or six or some flexible number of
Are
the
ugly women allowed to be there?
yes. but,
Okay.
but let me tell you this, there are none.
Right.
There aren't any. And I promise you that is true. Yeah. I mean, that just becomes, it's all, for me, you know, for, it's different for everybody, you know. I mean, really, it's different for everybody. I've heard stories about interstellar travel and meeting all sorts of people. Oh, so let me just finish by saying that all the women are beautiful. I mean, they just are, because so the men are all beautiful too. But I'm in that place in my yeah, with not a lot of positive feminine. So this is an access for me. But what was I going to say? Um, well, anyway, to continue with the story, there's five or six officiants that we're going to do this coming year. I am going to be an officiant. I'm going to participate in two ceremonies, one as an initiate, being reinitiated. And then the following weekend, I'm going to be one of the officiants because now I am a Banzi. I'm officially initiated into this tradition. That will be
Huh.
interesting.
I gotta say, I don't. Did you listen to my episode that I did on this?
Par- uh,
It's okay if you
par-
didn't.
no, I'm not sure that I did on iboga. No,
Okay, because I have skepticism,
I
Tom.
know. Oh no. Oh no. And so to continue where this started with 5 minutes ago. So yeah. And I'm curious and receptive because I have skepticism too, but I'm not sure what it's skepticism about anymore.
Well, can I share you mine, and then you
Yeah.
can alleviate this pain?
Yeah.
Which is that, uh, you know, Marco he's a psychiatrist. Is that right?
Oh,
Or psychologist?
he's been a therapist much of his
But he
adult
was
life.
looking for some sort of therapeutic. What I had heard in your class is here's a guy from country A appropriating culture be in bringing it over to South America,
Oh, sure.
essentially to look for some way to monetize iboga.
No,
And then there are these beautiful women who are there as part of this sort of seduction.
no,
And it just seems
no.
like, wait a minute, where's the spiritual thing? Where's the,
No, no, it's
what's
not.
going on?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Though that was certainly part of that kind of mindset was certainly. Well, no, I see. I trusted Marcos, so I knew these guys. Look, the world is full of shaman. When I first told my friend Rachel that I was going to go down there and do iboga, she said, "Oh, no, no, you shouldn't do that. People die doing iboga," and and she's plugged into the ayahuasca community, and she knows there's she's heard horror stories and she's seen awful things happen, and I mean, it's capitalism, and so somebody's going to make money off it. And I trust. Marco said at one point, he said, "Look, I only know two people in South America that I would trust in this ceremony, and one of them's an anthropology professor in French Guyana, and he ain't going to do it. But
Mm.
this guy, I know, I worked with him, and he's good, so you should come down." So I just trusted that this was a group that wasn't. They weren't shills. They weren't fakers. They weren't in the
Okay.
yeah. Um, and then and yeah, it's very weird because Gregory is a Frenchman who went to Gabon. He's the priest, the Nima. He went to Gabon in the French army because French colonial stuff.
Okay. I
Um,
thought Marco was the priest. Okay. So this is
no,
making a little more.
no.
Okay.
Marco's just an interested hanger on. No, God, no. Marco's no priest. Um, no, Greg's the Nima, and he went to Gabon, and he spent 15 years studying to be a Nima, and he was finally consecrated. He had two, a guy and a woman who were his teachers in the tradition, and he got consecrated, and he thought, this is so cool. I should go somewhere and introduce people to this remarkable healing plant, et cetera, et cetera. And he knew somebody in Brazil who said, you should come to Brazil because, if you tried to pull this off in the States, you'd be thrown in jail. In Brazil, it's not exactly legal, but it isn't illegal. And so just don't talk about it and everybody's happy. And so he set up he and his small group of officiants have been being mobile for a few years, and now they're trying to establish a place, which makes me nervous because as soon as these things get institutionalized in any way, they tend to go downhill in the ways that you're kind of worried about. But at least as it stands now, they don't make much money out of this. And they clearly are doing it. Well, they're all doing it for different reasons. There's like five or six of them. Some are young, some are old. But there's just no doubt that they're doing it in their heart of hearts because they want to give this gift to other people.
Okay.
Is that going to go off wrong eventually? Of course, it'll turn into a church. Yeah,
All
that's
right.
what people do. Yeah, of course it will. Because of course that's why you're not a guru. That's why I'm not a guru, because it goes off wrong. The thing that hooked me, even in my first experience, when I was so full of, oh no, not feathers and oh God, rattles and feathers and oh shit, I don't do this. Gregory said towards the end, he said, look, if anybody ever tells you they know what's going on here, they're lying, he says. It's a fucking mystery. you know he says, I can help you if you get into trouble because I've been doing this a long time, but if anybody tells you they know what's going on, don't believe them. And when he said that, he had me. I thought, okay, I'm in. I'm all in because
Okay.
That's what I need from a religion. It's not a religion. It's a fucking mystery.
Well, maybe this is a good place to leave it for today, although I want to pick it back up next time
Yeah,
because I really do want to know like how this forms your thinking of the imaginal, of the religious, of
yeah,
archetypes, all of that
yeah,
stuff. Like, is there a difference? Because we
yeah,
didn't even get into what the imaginal actually is. When I hear
yeah,
imaginal, I think imagination, but really there's a real specific sort of definition of the imaginal.
yeah, yeah. And we could plan on and actually do, because it's important. It's important in my little world because to anticipate what Kripal wants the imaginal to do, I do too, but Corbin wouldn't like it.
Hmm.
And we can talk about Corbin's vision of what the imaginal was versus mine and what I think Jeffrey's is, and why those things are different. And that would be super interesting.
That would be nice. Yeah, that would be great. And I would also like to just sort of know, as you're looking at these texts and these other people's alleged experiences and maybe some people's actual experiences, do they seem as personal as what you're experiencing on psychedelics? You know what I mean? Like, have you experienced anything on psychedelics that is like transpersonal and for everyone in the way that religion building is or philosophy is?
Oh, that's super interesting. And we will talk about that. Keep that,
Yeah,
keep
hope
that
I remember.
question.
So it's on
Yeah.
tape. So
It's on
I'll,
tape, so we got it. Yeah, no, that is super good. Yes. This is going to be really fun for me. So let's continue doing
yay.
this
Okay.
because I need to work this stuff out in the presence of someone with your experience and
I'm
background.
your shaman now.
You are. You
I'm not your
are.
guru, but I'll be your
No,
shaman.
no, no, no. Exactly, exactly. All right, we'll do this.
All right, and that concludes our first recording. Yay! We did it in two parts here. Um, when next we meet next week for the third episode, I'm just going to get going. I don't even think I'm going to do an intro and an outro. We're just going to pick it up and we're just going to keep the conversation rolling. So let's go. See you next week, everyone. Thanks for listening. And thanks again, Tom, for doing this. Pretty cool.